Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here, and this is going to be a slightly different video than you're used to seeing from me. As you can see, we're going to have a little bit of notation here. And as you can also see from the title, this is carrying on with my previous series on the major scale. And I originally was not going to create any sort of a visual aid for this, but I changed my mind. And as you can see here, we're going to be talking about linear scales again. And I wanted you to see what this looks like on paper. I'm gathering that most of you guys, I figure that most of you guys don't know anything about standard notation in music. And maybe that's because your teacher wimped out on you, or maybe you didn't want to know. But it actually is not that hard a thing to understand, and I do think it's really, really important when it comes to learning the guitar neck, learning the scales, learning the music. Theory is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing, and just because you know the theory doesn't mean you have to follow the rules all the time, but it can really get you out of a compositional or improvisational jam if you kind of know some things to fall back on. And this, honestly, the standard notation method, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to visualize music. There really isn't anything better. So let's get in on this. The first scale that I showed you guys a few videos ago was the C major scale. It started at the first fret on the B string, and we used the first fret, the third fret, and the fifth fret, and those were the notes C, D, and E. And then starting at the sixth fret, we did 6, 8, 10, 12, and then 13, and those were the notes F, G, A, B, C, and then finally, and then finally C at the end. And so the first thing I'm going to do, if you are not familiar at all with standard notation, that's what this top line is right here. Let me just switch the icon here. So this is the top line here. You can see from the bottom, we've got 5 lines, and we put notes on both the lines, on the lines and on the spaces in between the lines. Okay, let me just get rid of those. And so as you can see, we've got 5 lines, we've got 4 spaces for a total of 9 possible notes. So what we do is we add something called a clef. You guys might be familiar with this. This one here is called the treble clef, but it's also called the G clef. And the reason it's called the G clef, other than the fact that it looks a little like a cursive G, is that it's circling the note G right here. This second line from the bottom is G. And if you remember from our talks on the major scale, that it's pretty easy then to figure out what the rest of the names of the lines and the spaces are when you know what G is. So here's G. That means this space here is A, followed by B on the line, then C, D, E, and F. Okay, and then if we go backwards from G, we've got G, F, and E, and that takes care of the whole thing. And a lot of times in music classes, they teach you the lines first, E, G, B, D, F, and you might learn something like empty garbage before dad flips to try to remember those lines. And then they teach you something like face in the space, because the letter names in the space, the F, A, C, E, obviously when going from bottom to top, spells face. But I never really found that terribly helpful. I mean, it was great for memorizing those lines, but from a practical standpoint, it didn't really help me at all learn how to read music very well, because the music doesn't work like that. It does sometimes. We'll talk about that in another video, but you know, it's stepping from the line to the space. We're using scales, we're using chords, and that's how I learned to really understand this. You know, I had to look at it in a linear way, moving from line to space, and that's what we're going to do right now. So our C major scale, right, started on the note C, and it was kind of high on the guitar. If you remember, the B string is a treble string. Okay, so in the interest of being thorough, I am going to point out that the guitar is a transposing instrument. It sounds 1 octave lower than the notes that are written in standard notation. We do this for a lot of reasons, and a lot of woodwind instruments and some brass instruments, they transpose. They read their music in a different key, and the guitar just reads an octave lower. So if you want to actually hear a middle C, you have to write the note on the staff an octave higher so that the guitar player plays the right fret so that the actual pitch comes out. Okay, this can be a little confusing, but in the beginning, all you really need to do is, like I said for the scales, just kind of memorize that when you see a note on this staff, this is where you need to place your fingers on this fret. Okay, so I'm just going to enter the notes of the C major scale first in notation. So first we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C. And as you can see, we've extended the staff, right? Remember I said we've got more than 9 notes to choose from, right? So what we've done is we've extended the staff. We put a note on top of it. That's the G. This little line here, it's a ledger line. That's A. B is the space above that, and C is 2 ledger lines above that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this down. This is what it looks like in notation. So this is right here. This is B string, 1st fret. This is 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6, 8, 10, 12, and finally 13. And that's the whole scale. And you'll see it right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this down to the tablature. 1st fret is the lowest fret. Now this has made some adjustments. It's assuming that I want to play it all in one position, which I don't. So I'm actually going to pull these notes down, and you'll see there's the 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13. Okay, so that's what the scale looks like. You can see here. Now, honestly, this is one of the reasons why I really enjoy standard notation over tablatures, because you can see that the notes here are climbing, and you don't actually even have to read the notes themselves to know that they're climbing. And with a little practice, you can get used to knowing what that sounds like. Here, you really need to read all of the numbers to know that they're getting higher, and which when you're trying to do it on the fly, that can be really hard, but in music, that can be a little simpler. But that's the thing, see? So we've got the notes. This is what it looks like. This is what that scale looks like, and this is going across the whole neck right here, and it only encompasses these 8 notes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, just because I'm lazy, I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it down here. And I'm going to do a big transposition. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the key of these 2 measures right here. And where's my key tool? Here it is. So I'm going to change these to the key of G, right? So that was the next scale, was the key of G. And I'm going to put that up. And you can see that now we've really extended these ledger lines going up. Okay. Now, these numbers down here on the tablature don't match. They're wrong for what I showed you in the video, so I'm just going to move those up. We're going to bring that. See, so 3rd fret was the one that we did. Okay, so you see that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this again. And I'm not intending this as a tutorial on how to use notation software, but you see the actual shape of the scale is still the same. Right? These notes are going up. These relationships are still the same, right? We've got 2 frets difference between these 2 notes and these 2 notes, and 1 fret difference between these 2 notes. That's the same thing here. 2 frets, 1 fret, and then 2, 2, 2, and 1. It's the same formula, right? That whole step, half step, whole step, half step. It's the same thing. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put this down here. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to go back to my key signature tool, and I'm going to move this and transpose the key to D major, and I want the notes to go down. And there we go. Now this is giving me some funky stuff here, but watch what happens when I bring the tablature down to the right spot. Okay. Same notes, same frets, just a different string. And now we've got our new scale, D major. But notice how close it is to C major, right? The proximity of it, of the notes. Here's C on this 3rd space. Here's D on this 4th line. It's another reinforcement for how close together these things are. Okay, now if I go and do this, I'm going to do this one more time, and then I think we can call it a video. I'm going to copy this down. And I'm going to change this. The next scale that we did was in A. So I'm going to take this. Oops. And I'm going to transpose this to A. That's also going to go down. I'll drop that down. And then I'm going to drop these frets here. And there we go. Now we've got the 2nd fret on the G string, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, 13, 14. Just like I displayed in the video, the demonstration that went along with this, you can now see that this is exactly how the scale lays out. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to put a link in the description to a PDF that you can download. I'm going to finish this thing. I'm going to save it as a PDF, and you guys can have it. And it's going to have all of the, in actuality, 15 major keys that I demonstrated in the first 2 videos. I did one for sharp keys and I did one for flat keys, and I'm going to put them all together right here. And you're going to see a lot of overlap in the fingerings for these scales. And again, I'm just putting it together as a visual representation, so it's a little bit more. So sometimes I have found it very helpful to have something outside of the fretboard, right? Because we not only want to understand the fretboard, and we want to understand music, right? And music works in these steps and leaps and things like that. And that's the kind of thing that we want to get to know. And it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing. I could put these first 2 measures in front of just about any instrument, and as long as they know how to read standard notation, they could read it on their instrument, as opposed to tablature, which is very specific to a certain group of instruments. It's there for fretted instruments, and I can't necessarily give this to a banjo player because the tablature is completely different, but I could give this to a banjo player and it would totally work. So I'm going to put this together in a PDF for you guys. The link is going to be in the description below, and the next few videos you'll find I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do this for the lateral scales going across the neck and also the diagonal scale. So eventually you'll have all of this stuff and you'll have a good reference for this. And then we'll probably move on to minor scales. So let me know in the comments below if you find this helpful, if you find it confusing, if there's anything you want clarification on. I can certainly put that together in another video. In the meantime, I hope you're getting something out of this, and please share it with anybody that you think might be interested in it. If you got other guitar player friends that might benefit from it, please share it. And in the meantime, I am Kevin O'Shaughnessy. Good luck with all of this, and I'll see you in the next video.